Curious how you could help improve the health and well-being of your staff? Get insights, cost savings opportunities, and disease prevention at your fingertips with Springbuck Health Data Analytics. Learn more at springbuck.com.
Snap, ball down, the field goal is up, and he's done it! He's done it! Adam Vinatieri has just become the NFL's all-time leader in points scored.
I grew up loving everything about radio. You know, I loved the way it allowed you to use your imagination. You know, the great ones can take you there. You know, their play-by-play narration can take you to the game without even seeing it.
Andrew Luck going for a home run deep downfield, looking for T.Y. Hilton. Hilton makes the catch. He's at the 10, 5, stumbles in the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown! T.Y. Hilton!
Andrew Luck's last season on the field, Matt Taylor's first in the broadcast booth.
And there's the knee, and there it is. The Colts are going to the playoffs. The Colts are going back to the playoffs.
Back then, Taylor was the interim guy. No guarantees he was going to get the Colts play-by-play job permanently. Now, 3 years later, Taylor is the guy, describing what happens when another guy named Taylor gets the ball.
Lowers his shoulder, and he pounds his way across the goal line. Touchdown! I-N-D-Y, Jonathan Taylor. And 10 makes a man miss. He's at the 5, cuts back, spun forward. He's close to the goal line. Touchdown! Touchdown! Jonathan Taylor starts out left side, cuts up at the 5, stiff arms his way into the end zone. Jonathan Taylor, that was a thing of beauty. Give off to Jonathan Taylor, stood up at the 1, falls forward. There's 5 of them. Number 5, Jonathan Taylor has found the end zone 5 times in the game.
It has been an incredible run for Indy's own Matt Taylor. The journey of the voice of the Indianapolis Colts on this week's Business and Beyond podcast. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. It all started in Matt Taylor's basement on the Indianapolis South Side, where as a young boy, he'd do his pregame broadcast version of introducing Pacers great Reggie Miller, or pretend he was in the Monday Night Football booth calling a game for the Colts. Sports, particularly football, has always been in Matt Taylor's blood. He was a standout on back-to-back Roncalli High School state championship teams and played varsity football all 4 years at Franklin College. Taylor eventually traded his football helmet in for a radio mic, started out calling high school games, moved on to the college level, landed broadcasting and producing roles with 1070 The Fan, then got his big break with the Colts in 2012 as manager of radio production. 6 years later, he took over for longtime Colts play-by-play announcer Bob Lamey. And I'm pleased to be joined by the voice of the Indianapolis Colts, Matt Taylor. Matt, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, I should mention we are taping this conversation the day before a very big game, Colts, Patriots. Hey, first of all, what's game week, whatever the game might be, what's game week like for you in terms of preparation?
Well, I mean, certainly there's a lot that goes into it. I would estimate that, 60, 65 hours of my week is, I pour myself into the game. I sort of treat myself like a player or a coach. I got to be prepared for game day. There's no reason not to be prepared, right? It's that old Vince Lombardi line, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. So my goal every week is to be able to put whatever happens during the game into context. So preparation for me is a really big thing. So I really spend a lot of time on it, knowing the teams, knowing the players, knowing the history of the series. In this case, like you said, it's the Colts and the Patriots. So there's a lot of responsibilities that I have during the course of the week. If you look at a radio station, you've got, people that, you have producers, you have a program director, you have talent, you have, people that traffic the spots and so on and so forth. So think of me as I'm all of those people in one. I do all of those jobs.
Right. Yeah.
To Colts radio broadcast. So really my DNA is over everything that you hear coming out of your speakers when you listen to a Colts game, on top of doing play-by-play. So, like Monday through Friday, we have, weekly shows or daily shows, content on the Colts, whether that's, a radio show or podcast, things of that nature. So I'm really overseeing all of that. So about 70% of my day, Monday through Friday, is getting done what I have to get done that day, right? Doing deadline stuff and getting things done that have to be done that particular day. And then the rest of the day, the 30% is getting ready for Sunday. And then when you add all of those other 30% together, that gets me ready for Sunday. So it really is, it's not like a 9-to-5 job, so to speak, where you're clocking in, clocking out. It really is 7 days a week for 7-8 months. And you really can never turn your brain off of football. And quite frankly, I don't want to, because that's how much I like, what I do and enjoy what I do. But no, I mean, there's a lot of long hours during the week to get ready for Sunday. Plus I've got, a family, a wife and 2 kids. So, once I'm done hitting a nice little ending spot late in the afternoon, I'll stop down and do, dad responsibilities. But then when the day is done and dust is kind of settled a little bit, kids go to bed, dinner's done and all that stuff, I'll go back to work and work till about 11:30 at night, because that's, to me, in my opinion, that's what it takes to get ready for Sundays in the NFL.
Is it possible to over prepare? There's so much information out there that's available. You're a passionate guy about what you do. You want to be prepared. You want to be ready. Is there a risk in it kind of getting too much information?
Yeah, I think that's a real thing. I think you have to be cognizant of that, because we're talking about the NFL, and there is, for every team, there's countless beat writers, and now you've got analytics and the fantasy aspect of things. So the information is out there and it's readily available. So there is a little bit of a risk of paralysis by analysis, but I try to be organized and I try to prioritize things. And I think what I fell into the trap of earlier in my career was, if I go to the time to research something, I was going to cram it on the broadcast, right? I was going to force it in there. But it really is, that old adage of you use about 10% of 100% of your prep, and the game dictates what information you relay to the audience based on how the game is going. And so it's really kind of a demoralizing feeling at the end of the week when you go back and you look at the notes, you kind of review the tape and you review, how you performed, and you go back and sort of cross-reference what information you got on the broadcast, what information you used. And it's like, man, I only used a fraction of what I was prepared for. But, that's again, it goes back to me and my, I think that's my athletic background is be prepared for anything that can happen. Because, it's a sick feeling when something happens on the field and you're not ready for it. You have nothing to put into context based on what happened. So it's really, that's really what I try to avoid is not being prepared for anything that can happen, no matter how wild, the game unfolds.
Well, okay. As I mentioned, Colts, Patriots tomorrow, prime time, Saturday night game. You're an athlete. You played football at the college level. You know what it's like to get up for a game. Do you get up, kind of like when you were an athlete for a broadcast in a game like this? I mean, huge game, 2 iconic franchises, everything, so much on the line for the Colts. You kind of get up like you did for games?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's human nature. I mean, we all know what this means. I mean, at the end of the day, right? I mean, let's put it into the balance, right? You've got 4 games left as we sit here and talk right now for the Colts. They're 7-6. They're in the heat of the playoff mix in the AFC. So much parity inside the conference. They need to start stacking wins, right? So it's an important game because of what that means for the playoff picture. But it's Saturday night. It's prime time. It's Colts and Patriots. You're trying to snap an 8-game losing streak if you're the Colts. So without question. Now, that being said, like I said, it's human nature to get amped up. And at the end of the day, right, I'm a fan just like everybody else. So, I mean, I'd be watching games pretty intently if I wasn't doing what I'm doing. But you have to make sure that, just like a player and the coach, like the moment, the magnitude doesn't overwhelm you, right? I can't screw up these calls. I can't get flummoxed just because it's a big moment. So I try to calm myself down and live in the moment and make sure I do the best job I can based on the magnitude of these plays, which inevitably there's going to be some big moments and some big plays, down at crunch time in that game coming up.
Is this your dream job? I mean, you've had an interest, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I think in broadcasting for a long, long time. Is this, being the Colts play-by-play guy, being the guy, is this kind of your dream job?
Well, I think, when I was 10 years old, I was blessed to know, like, I knew what I wanted to do. I grew up, Jimmy Mad Dog Matus is a family friend of mine. And I mean, you talk about just icons and radio legends in Indianapolis, being able to just sort of be around him and talk to him as the older I got and to use him as a mentor, it really kind of cemented, like I wanted a career in radio. So as a kid, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in radio, but then the older I got and the more involved I got in sports, that kind of funneled me into what I'm doing now. I really, around high school, college, I was like, okay, I like sports. I'm watching sports. I'm playing, sports. I have an athletic background. I can talk intelligently about these things. And so really, once I got to college, it was all about like, how do I get involved in radio and how do I make this happen? What steps do I need to take to put myself in a position to do this at a professional level? So, growing up in this market, there was a lot of guys that I really learned from and took from, like Don Fischer and Mark Boyle. You mentioned Bob Lamey, Joe McConnell, who I think is just fantastic. That he did, he's had more jobs, high profile jobs in radio than I've applied for. Right. I mean, he's done
right.
basically everything, every sport at a high level. And so, I was kind of like a melting pot guy. I would, rather listen to a game than watch a game so that I could pick up on how these guys did it. And, I took things from the different styles and sort of made it into my own different or my own little style, my own little way of going about how I did things. But yeah, I mean, listen, it's not lost on me. I wanted to do it at a professional level. I don't know if I ever told myself I got to be the voice of the Colts, but it's not lost on me that I have one of 32 jobs in the National Football League. And I didn't have to, I mean, I'm pursuing a dream and that I'm doing professional sports, doing it at a high level. I don't have to uproot my family and move across the country to do it. And I'm doing it in the market for an NFL team that I grew up watching and rooting for. Gary, I tomorrow, I mean, I know we're kind of putting things into context as we sit here and tape right now, but tomorrow I'll drive 12, 13 minutes to sit in my seat, to get to my chair in the radio booth at Lucas Oil Stadium. And I mean, like what are the odds that I'm one of 32 guys, but I'm also doing it in my hometown? Like, it's just, it's not lost on me how fortunate I am. And therefore I take it very seriously. And I think I have a major responsibility to do right by the job and the opportunity.
Yeah. You mentioned your style and developing a style, radio, broadcasting, play-by-play, much different than television. You've got to really paint that picture. What do you try to do? Do you have a thought process or, again, your style? What do you try to do? How do you try to bring home the game, the excitement to the fans?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I'm not naive to the fact that 99% of my audience or, the Colts radio audience is listening to the game because for whatever reason, they can't be at the game or watching on TV at a 65-inch high def, monitor, right? I mean, it's 2021. So we all know what advantages there are to sitting on your couch and watching on TV. So therefore, I know that about the audience. And so I call the game, quite frankly, how I would want to listen to the game. And I've got my pet peeves just like everybody else. And so I try to eradicate those from my call. And so what I try to do, and I'm not always successful at it because things kind of slip away at times, but I try to hammer people over the head with time and score. Because if the audience is very transient, it's going in and out, right? The only people that are listening to me from start to finish are, my parents, my in-laws, and some close friends. Right? I know that. So people are out running errands, so they're doing family stuff, and they're just out and about, and they're coming in and out of the broadcast. They want to know who has the ball, what time it is, and where they are on the field, right? So I'm hammering those things over and over. So I think my style, I think you could describe it as very, disciplined, very fundamental. I try not to deviate away from the things that I know the audience needs to hear. But at the same time, I kind of subscribe to, I didn't come up with this idea, but I very much adopted it. It's called like the broadcast pyramid. And, like when you're in third grade, you have the food ingredients period, right? At the bottom, right? You've got all the most important things that you have to have growing up to have a healthy diet, right? You have fruits and grains and vegetables. Well, in the broadcast pyramid, it's all those things that I just talked about at the bottom, the most important things: time, score, who's got the ball. But then as you go up to the top, and you funnel up to the top of the pyramid, then you can get to the things that really kind of separate the broadcast from the fundamentals, like using good description, using good adjectives, telling me who's important. Why is what I'm about to hear? Why does that matter? And then at the very top is a concept I like to call voice is instrument, right? Because your voice is your instrument, your inflection, your pacing, your energy. That tells you, or should tell the audience, what's going on in the game without me telling you what the score is, right? I mean, hopefully the audience can come in just by turning on the station and they know if it's a close game or if it's a big moment just based on how I'm talking, the crowd in the background, the energy of the broadcast, without knowing the time and the score. So that's sort of my philosophy on the broadcast, is to really paint the picture as best I can, but at the same time, use good energy, use good description and adjectives. If it's a pass over the middle, don't just tell me it's a pass. Tell me what kind of pass it is, right? If it's a laser or a lob or it's a over the shoulder catch, be as descriptive as possible when it's appropriate.
Yeah. Hey, take us back to when you first got the job, the play-by-play job on an interim basis. Initially, you'd been working for the Colts. Bob Lamey announced his retirement, which was very sudden. And as I was reading, I think you got the word, or you said, hey, you were told you were the guy like 48 hours before a preseason game. How'd that all come down?
Yeah, I mean, it was wild. I mean, without question, it was chaos. It was, I was basically for that season, Gary, I was doing 2 full-time jobs. I was doing my job plus the play-by-play. And, I already talked about just the amount of energy and preparation that goes into doing that job justice. And so it was really kind of hectic. And, once the season started, I was working crazy hours and trying to, think how other people thought, which was a fool's errand, but it's human nature to kind of fall in that trap. Do they think I'm doing a good enough job? Do I need to change what I'm doing to appease them? Who are the movers and the shakers that are going to decide my fate on this, so to speak? And so it was kind of nerve-wracking. And, I wasn't nervous per se, because honestly, like once I called the games, like Sundays for me, that was my sanctuary. That was my safe place. Right. It was everything else. It was the Monday through Saturday stuff where I was my own worst enemy, trying to perfect this as best I could to make sure I was doing right by all the other people that had a say in my fate. But I don't know what point it was in the season, maybe halfway through the season, I just said, you know what, this is a fool's errand here. You a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of worrying about things you can't control. So I told myself, just live in faith and not fear. And I think once I changed that mindset, it really helped me. And, it kind of changed my outlook on things, knowing like, you've got the chops for this job. You've got the passion for this job. You can do this job. Just do the best you can. Don't just do it the way you see fit. And don't try to go out of your way to change your style to appease anybody else. So once I switched that mindset, I think it was a better, my headspace for me the rest of the season. And it certainly all worked out. But, my biggest trepidation was just, to be honest with you, it was embarrassment. I didn't want to go through that process where, and this is not to downplay anybody else, but most folks that are up for a job and a big promotion, if they don't get it, basically they know it, their employer knows it, and maybe their spouse or significant other would know that they got passed over for a promotion. Well, for my case, it was the whole fan base, right? You're talking about millions of people, right? The entire city, an entire region will know that you didn't get this job. So it's a little bit of a unique position to be in. And so I worked my tail off, to be honest with you, and I still do, but I especially that season, to make sure I was doing a good job so that there was no reason to go anywhere else. And, I'm proud of a lot of things, but I think the biggest thing I'm proud of during that whole situation was, once the season was over, or towards the end of the season, when they said, hey, we're going to take the interim tag off and we're giving you this massive opportunity, to my knowledge, they didn't interview anybody else, right?
Wow.
They trusted what I had done. They had trusted the work that I had put in that entire season, to the point where, they knew that, Matt's our guy. We don't need to go anywhere else to fill this job.
Yeah. Hey, what do you remember about the moment that you were told you are the guy, full-time, permanent? How did that happen? And what do you remember about that?
Yeah. So it was about this time of year, maybe fast forward a couple of weeks. We're getting ready to, it was 2018, and we're getting ready to play the Texans in the playoffs. And that game, I think, was a Saturday game. So we were flying out Friday, and they had called me in for a meeting the day before the game, a couple hours before we're getting ready to take off. And I thought it was like a marketing meeting where, they want me involved in the meeting to go over some playoff messaging, some things they want to incorporate in the broadcast, which is very, very normal. So I really didn't think much of the meeting ahead of time. And to my surprise, it was the ownership group and Pete Ward, who's the CEO of the team, and some other folks in there, and really didn't know what to expect, and really was caught off guard by it. So I was thinking to myself, oh boy, like what's this all about? And then they shut the door and gave me the massive news. And I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall and go back in time in the DeLorean and witness my reaction, because I like to think like outwardly I was composed and was pretty poised for the situation, but I think definitely inside I'm jumping out of my skin in excitement. I just want to go high five the group and call my family and my close that had been supporting me that year. So yeah, it was definitely a very, very cool moment. And the fact that it happened before the playoff game, and I was sort of, and I appreciated what they did. They said, keep this under wraps a little bit, because we don't want this to get overshadowed by the playoff game and the run in the postseason. Yeah. They didn't have to do. I thought that was cool by them. And I appreciated that. So once, the dust on the season settled a little bit, then they put out an announcement. And quite frankly, Gary, I was more anxious about that and more, nerve-wracked about that. It's very ironic, because I have a very public position. I'm sort of a mouthpiece for the organization. So I get that, but I really don't like the attention. I don't like the spotlight on me. So that day was more nerve-wracking for me than it was just calling the games on an interim level.
Yeah. Great story. Hey, we have much more ahead with Matt Taylor. We're going to find out how he got the radio bug. We'll talk about playing college football at Franklin College and a lot more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
Imagine a world where every healthcare and benefits program decision is backed and guided by data. Springbuck is the health data analytics solution that equips you with the insights and expertise you need to sharpen your benefits strategy, advance employee health, and contain costs. Springbuck, a world of actionable health intelligence insight at your fingertips. Visit springbuck.com to learn more.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC. My guest this week, the voice of the Indianapolis Colts, Matt Taylor. And Matt, I was joking with my executive producer, Teresa Ditton. You are a member, as she is, of the Southside Catholic Mafia, as I like to describe it. Jimmy Mad Dog Matus has been on the podcast, Joey Molinaro as well. And so you're the third member. Southsider, grew up at Roncalli High School. Sports, obviously very important to you. You're a football player at Roncalli, two state championships. Talk about, you obviously love sports, but I know in reading, doing a little research before our conversation here, you used to do your own broadcast, right? And your own pregame introductions and those types of things. Take us back to the basement of your home growing up.
Yeah, I mean, my parents, I have to give them a lot of credit, because they never deterred my imagination. And as a kid, I had a really big imagination. I wanted to do everything. Like every job that I thought was cool, I wanted to have that job. So I wanted to be like the Pacers PA guy. I wanted to be Jimmy Mad Dog Matus and work at Q95 and doing impressions on the Bob and Tom show. Like I knew I wanted to be in entertainment, so to speak, right? I wanted to do something, not sitting behind a desk. I just knew I wasn't really built for, the ability to kind of sit still all day. And so without question, I turned my parents' living room into Market Square Arena whenever the Pacers were playing. And I grew up in the height of the Pacers-Knicks rivalry and Reggie Miller and Davis and Mark Jackson, right? So, before every game, I would flip the lights off and get out the spotlights and turn my living room into like the pregame introductions with Reggie Miller. And I'd get out the boombox and I'd be Red Porter on the PA. It was just so much fun. And like my parents embraced it. And, again, going back to my parents, like, I told them in college, like, hey, my goal is to do professional sports, be a play-by-play guy. And they're like, they could have said, okay, like, good luck with that. Like, what are the odds that? But they never like forced me to do something else or encouraged me to get another degree or anything like that. They were beyond supportive. So I think growing up, that's what really fueled my passion, and the dream was just sort of always there because I had support not only from myself but from my family structure as well to really go for it and just see where this takes you. So yeah, like I said, I was really blessed as a 10-year-old kid to know what I wanted to do, and I would sneak in a transistor radio and have that on with Monday Night Football, listening to Marv Albert and Boomer Esiason, and growing up going to IU games and doing Don Fischer impersonations because I had listened to him so much and had tried to take so much of what he did that I just adopted his ability to talk and his inflection and stuff like that. So,
hey, Matt, I think I knew that about you. Can you give us a little Don Fischer?
Well, yeah, we're back at the Rock here Memorial Stadium where Indiana takes on the Iowa Hawkeyes. We're about 15 minutes away from game action. Here's Joe Smith with a look at the Crimson and Gold Cup update. We're back in a moment. This is Indiana University football from Learfield.
That is outstanding. That's very good.
3 minutes to go in the contest here at Assembly Hall.
That I'm telling you, I bet you've gotten a lot of mileage out of that. That is.
But
really
that's
good.
the thing. Like Don's a good friend of mine and a good mentor, and he knows he's incredible. Don did the introductions for my wedding with my wedding party. Like that's how cool he is. And I always say, like, if I can do if anybody can do an impression of anybody, it means that they're paying attention to you and you're imitating. So it's a big level of respect.
Yeah. Hey, you, as I mentioned, you were a high school football player, really good. You were a linebacker, right?
Correct. Yep.
Linebacker, went to Franklin College and played for a guy who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. He was a great coach, but an even better person in Mike Leonard. You didn't really think twice about going there, did you? I know you were recruited by other schools, but Franklin seemed like that was your spot.
Yeah, it really was. It checked all the boxes for me. It was a small school, so therefore I could jump in right away and start, pursuing this dream I had of being on the radio, right? Small campus radio station. I think the great programs around the state, Indiana, Ball State, like these are top-notch places to be. But for me, what I think helped me was just cutting my teeth right away. And it didn't matter that I wasn't calling Division I games. It just mattered that I was getting experience behind the mic. And you go back and listen to those early college tapes of doing play-by-play. They're hilarious, right? So without that experience, though, it doesn't just continue to fuel the flame, if you will. Yeah. But no, I don't. I wanted to have a good college experience and go somewhere where I could have a meaningful education, good experience, but also I wanted to play ball. That was important to me. I wanted to play football and have a chance to, to do something special. And Franklin at the time was coming off a 2-8 season for Coach Leonard. It was his second year on the job. And I was telling people like, hey, I'm going to Franklin. And they're like, why are you doing that? And you just knew. If you know Coach Leonard, he is one of the most genuine people you're ever going to meet. And people are hired all the time and they say, we're going to change the culture and we're going to revamp the program. And, that gets thrown around all the time. But like, you just knew he was going to get the job done because he was going to surround himself with really good people and really good players. So that attracted me big time to go to Franklin. And quite honestly, I don't think I'd go to Franklin if it's not for Coach Leonard. He's still to this day, one of my best friends. We talk all the time. And the biggest reason why he was successful on the field, he's a great coach, don't get me wrong, but it's the people. It's the trust that he had from everybody that bought into his system and bought into his culture. So it's really no surprise that he was as successful as he's turned out to be as the winningest coach in the history of Franklin football.
Yeah. You started your career, small markets. I think that's very important to kind of, earn your stripes in the smaller markets. But WMDH in Newcastle, you also called IU women's volleyball, right? Talk about your early post-college career.
Yeah. So I graduate, and then it's just like, all right, figure it out. What are you going to do? How are you going to make ends meet? How are you going to pay for your cell phone bill? Right? How are you going to take your girlfriend out on dates and be able to afford dinners? Right? Yeah. All of a sudden, life comes at you pretty fast. And I was searching for anybody that would give me an opportunity to get behind the mic, no matter what that meant. You talk about Newcastle at WMDH. I was weekends part-time from 4 to 8. And I would drive from Indianapolis to Newcastle, which is about an hour drive. It was a country music station. Gary, I hate country. I cannot stand modern country music. Now, I like the old stuff, right? I like, Marshall Tucker and Merle Haggard and all that. I like the classic stuff. So I didn't know anything about country music. But you bet your butt, from 4 to 8 on Saturdays and Sundays, I knew everything there was to know about country music, right? I knew when Brad Paisley had a new baby. I knew everything, right? So it was just an opportunity. It's just that was my motto. Just do the best job you can, because you never know who's listening, and you never know who's going to give you an opportunity to do something else bigger and better down the road. So I had a lot of jobs like that. I had, the country gig. I had, the IU job. And that was just, I was making probably, $50 a game. And that was just another step behind the microphone to get better, to hone your craft, learn from your mistakes. And then, I had another job where I was working at Emmis. They just pulled my name from a stack of resumes, and they just needed a warm body to come in and answer phones for Bob Lovell's show, right? That show on Fridays and Saturday nights. It's kind of a high school post-game show, if you will. And back in the day, I was hired to answer phones. People would call in scores, right? This is before Twitter and all that. So people are physically calling in the result of the game. I would jot it down. I would hand it to the producer. I was part-time as part-time could be. Again, I'm 22, 23-year-old kid. And all my friends are like, you're going to go do what? They're all going to the bars and going to, events and hanging out. I'm like, sorry, guys, I got to go do this. They look at you like you have 3 heads.
Right.
But, you get your foot in the door. Just get your foot in the door. And then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, right, you're showing your versatility. You're showing you're much more than just a warm body. You're proving you have passion for this. You have energy for this profession, and you want to work your way up. So then I'm producing shows, and then I'm producing shows on other stations inside the Emmis cluster, and then I'm hosting shows. Now I'm a full-time employee. So it's just like, you say no for a really crappy job, you say no to everything that can happen after that. I tell that story all the time. Just get your foot in the door, and then you can show what you can really do.
Yeah, in working with Bob Love, that show is iconic, or is iconic. Yeah. Friday and Saturday nights, tune in. I remember when as our kids were playing high school sports and football, tuning in to get scores from around the region, around the state. I'll bet. And Bob Lovell, great guy, who's just again a legend in the radio sports radio circles.
No, and I knew that. Like, I was a geek, so as a 22-year-old kid, like, I knew who Bob Lovell was. I knew what the show was. Most people my age didn't, because 22-year-olds aren't listening to sports talk radio religiously. So I knew that about the job. So when they said, hey, we just need you to answer phones, I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. Sign me up. I just want to be part of something. So absolutely.
Yeah. When'd you get the your connection? You were at the Fan, and then that connection. How did you get connected with the Colts?
So I knew how the business structure works with the Colts, in that they own the broadcast, they own all the inventory, they hire the announcers, they are in complete control of their product, if you will. And so I knew that about the relationship between Emmis and the Fan and the Colts. And so it was always, if I wanted to really pursue this and have a realistic shot at it, it was like, how do I get over to the Colts? And so it kind of all worked out. It was a domino effect, if you will. It's the 4th of July weekend, 2012. And most of the talent staff on air at the Fan is gone. They're out, on vacation, taking some time off, rightfully so. But I was a young kid, and I was just going to put in the work and continue to grind. And they had a couple of people from the Colts come over and kind of fill in, doing some shows, the doldrums of the summer. And same kind of mindset, right? I just treated that opportunity to do my best and to show what I could do. And I guess it had an effect on them. I guess I showed them something, so to speak, and worked a week with some people there inside the organization, and then they kind of circled back with me a couple of days later and said, "Hey, we were really impressed with what you did, and kind of all the stuff that you were juggling and managing behind the scenes. We might be looking for somebody to come in and do that for us and manage our network and kind of be the business guy, but also handle all of the production and do all the nitty gritty, behind the scenes stuff for our operation." And so that to me was a no brainer. And, they offered me a job a couple of days later. And so that to me was just like, common sense to get my foot in the door there, start from the bottom, and then just slowly but surely prove what you could do and show that you're much more than what you're just hired for. Right. So over time, I started doing sideline reporting and pregame shows and hosting the TV show and doing play-by-play for the preseason TV broadcast. So I just wanted to show them like I was a pretty versatile guy, pretty serious about this. So there's nothing that I couldn't do if you needed me. So that was my goal. Whenever a switch was made at the play-by-play position, it was just my objective to show them like, hey, this will be a really seamless transition. And you won't regret, the versatility that I have.
Yeah. Matt, as you look kind of going forward, first of all, short term here with the rest of the Colts season, we're in the home stretch here. Obviously, the big game with the Patriots coming up tomorrow. Describe the season from your standpoint as a fan. Been highs and lows, obviously, some frustrations with the games they should have won that they lost.
Mm-hmm.
Back and forth, but been a very interesting season. What's your take on the Colts season, at least so far?
Yeah, it has been an interesting season. It's almost, I've used the analogy, it started off so rocky and filled with drama in terms of injuries and a COVID situation. So it's almost like what they tried to get done in training camp, they had to hit the reset button and have time on task in those first couple of weeks of the season, which I think kind of led to their 0-3 start, right? They just didn't get a lot of time and synergy built up during training camp because of injuries. So it's almost like the month of September was training camp 2.0. But now they're at where they wanted to be at the start of the season. They've had a handful of games they'd like to have back, and they're trying to prove that they can close these games out and prove that they can beat the elite teams like Tampa Bay and certainly within their own division in Tennessee. I think they're going to get there, but yeah, I don't know what more you want from this team from about week 4 on. They've won 7 of their last 10 as we sit here and talk right now. And in that time span, the offense has just been lethal. They're scoring about 32 points per game since week 4, which is the number 1 offense in the NFL in that time. Jonathan Taylor has emerged as an unbelievable player, kind of picking up where he left off from last year, but then ascending even higher. He's squarely in the MVP race. And what's been fun about this stretch here for the Colts, they've known for a long time that their margin for error is pretty slim, but they've been taking care of business for the most part, but they're also getting some help. If you go back from the bye week, they started that bye week 9th in the AFC in the conference, and they finished the bye week without even playing 6th. Yeah. And as we sit here and talk right now, the Chargers lost last night. So if the Colts win tomorrow against New England, they could be up to number 5. So it's just incredible what's kind of broken for them this season with their own doing and then getting some help elsewhere in the conference. Starting 0-3, 1-4, you're thinking to yourself, all right, with this start plus the injuries they've sustained, this ain't going to happen. There's just no way that, this is, playoffs are in the cards this year for this team. But they always take that 1-0 approach and control what they can and take it one game at a time. And slowly but surely, they've gotten themselves into this situation. And I'd be really surprised as of right now if they don't make the playoffs, considering how well they're playing right now.
Yep. Well, we will certainly be watching and importantly listening down the stretch, and certainly hope it ends well for the Colts in the regular season and continues with a long run in the playoffs. Matt, it's been a real treat to have this conversation. Love your attitude on work and getting that job, getting that next opportunity, doing the best you can, and making the best out of it. And you certainly have and continue to do that. Thanks for joining us, and good luck the rest of the season and beyond.
I appreciate it. My pleasure.
All right. Matt Taylor, the voice of the Indianapolis Colts, my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. It is a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download it and listen to all of our episodes. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com, and you can get business news 24/7 there as well. InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.